All right, welcome to the next episode of the Better by the Numbers podcast presented by Life Metrics. We're at the third annual Roundtable of Longevity Clinics. I'm here with Dr. David Barzilai. Am I saying that right?
Yeah.
Nice,
Very nice to meet you.
Very nice
Aging
to meet you as well.
Doc. Some people know me from agingdoc.com.
Okay, sounds good. So what do you do in the longevity space? How long you've been in it, and what attracts you to it?
I've been practicing longevity medicine since 2009. I focus on evidence-based best practices around longevity for individuals and organizations. I'm an MD, PhD. I'm a diplomat of the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine. I'm a Harvard Medical School lecturer, and I'm a trustee for the Geneva College of Longevity Science. So basically, I'm a medical doctor who focuses on longevity best practices, but primarily as a consultant for clients around the world and direct access.
Wow, you are like an overall expert in the longevity space, it seems like. So my question to you is, where do you see the longevity space going? It's kind of, I wouldn't say in its infancy, but it's fairly new. Some people are just finding out about it. So like, where do you see it progressing to?
I think a major area is education. People are starting to hear about longevity. The challenge is they're hearing about it from diverse sources. So you have groups of people who dismiss the concept of longevity because they see it as a bunch of snake oil, because a lot of it is snake oil, because a lot of it is marketing and hype. On the other hand, you have individuals who are coming to longevity because they realize there's a real longevity science that's coming. So educating people, on one hand, don't buy into the hype. On the other hand, it's not all hype, and finding the real longevity science. And a lot of the real longevity science is a combination of preventative medicine, things like lifestyle medicine, diet and exercise, sleep, and also coming technology, things like wearables, things like early detection tools, and ways to manage patients and clients better by measuring and making adjustments and improving your health, rather than just waiting until you get sick, then coming to the doctor too late in the game. So I'd say education is a big area, and another is these technologies.
Perfect. You said that it's a lot of marketing, a lot of snake oil. How do you differentiate, who's just selling you on the idea versus who's actually taking the time to put in, the care and the measurements?
Well, I wish it was a one-liner and then you have all the information you need. Just like for falling for scams, there are multiple elements to it, several things you look for. But if you're looking for distinguishing between science and science fiction, first of all, you want to be looking at credentialing. You want to look at, like, for example, I'm a diplomat of the American Board of Lifestyle Medicine. So that's an examination and certification process physicians get, where they actually have to study in depth and take an exam and pass it. So credentialing is one area. And I wish that was it, but it's not it, because you have individuals who aren't credentialed who are good, and you also have people who are credentialed, and though it's not as common, they still might not be pursuing what's in the best interest of individuals. So second thing you look for is people who are focused not just about one particular product, says, hey, I have the solution for you. Everybody should be taking this supplement. But you should be looking for individuals who ask more questions and study your actual data. And it's only after understanding someone's data that you really can give sensible advice. I mean, do you have someone who says everybody should be taking cholesterol medications when you haven't measured cholesterol? Everybody should be on a blood pressure medication when you haven't checked what your blood pressure is? It depends, right? So anybody who's giving you an answer before they really understand you, there's an issue. And a third is, if they're already if they're sort of not completely aligned with what you're doing, they're saying, I have a package for you where everybody should be taking the supplements. I would be a little bit more skeptical that supplement is something everyone should be taking. So if they make a profit directly off of what they're doing for you, it doesn't mean that it's necessarily that they're not acting in your best interest. It just means you should be a little bit more skeptical and get information maybe from a third party before you go forward.
Okay, yeah, some solid advice actually, especially for a lot of people who are like looking at their ads and it's like, hey, take this supplement, you'll be fine, you'll be taken care of. Now, so you've been in the space since 2009, is that what you said?
That's correct. And I've been practicing longevity medicine since 2009. Close friends and family, but the lion's share of what I do now, when I'm not engaging the public directly as a Harvard Medical School lecturer, or as a member of an advisory board, or as a keynote speaker at longevity conferences, as I work through an LLC, Barzilai Longevity Consulting, and there it's about complementing longevity medicine practices that individual are already part of. In other words, people contract with me directly through the web interface, so they want to have direct access to me, someone who doesn't have any skin in the game, and just is they're completely aligned with them. So partly what I do is I give objective feedback for people's longevity plan or care they're seeking, contracting with me. So that's only several years old, but the original practice is since 2009. That's right.
Wow. So the feedback that you're giving, I've talked to a couple of people who are convinced that at some point AI can give you this feedback, that AI will be able to measure and quantify everything that you're taking in for as a longevity expert, and be able to tell the individual how to move forward with their life plan or with their health plan or whatever it is. Do you believe AI can actually get to that point? Do you believe it is going in that direction?
I think AI can be helpful. The devil's in the details on how people use it. First of all, the AI of today is very different than just a year ago or 6 months ago. In fact, generative models like OpenAI's ChatGPT, or Alphabet, also some people call, Google's Gemini, even Grok, certainly Anthropic's model. All of these models are improving exponentially, so it's a moving target. Now, you can't trust AI because it can hallucinate. So you need to not trust, but verify if you're using it to get more information. So I would just say it depends on how you're using it, but it's definitely getting better every year. One of the better models out there is something we haven't discussed yet, which is there's Perplexity. And what Perplexity, it uses other generative models and has its own proprietary system, and it tends to be better about not hallucinating. That's not making things up, and it provides citations so you can look them up and verify for yourself. But what I would just triangulate it if you're using it. Of course, AI is already being used for a lot of great technologies by some of the data we get. Like, for example, AI is being used in a lot of the wearables people use to give you a score. AI is already being used for diagnostic tests. Even when you're getting a whole body MRI, there's a neuroquant test that looks at your brain volume and calculates your probability for getting Alzheimer's dementia, and that uses AI. So AI is really already being integrated in a way we don't directly see into a lot of things that are accurate.
It's been proven to be accurate already. Okay, yeah, that was my next question. It's like, how
validated.
can we tell it's accurate?
It's in some forms AI is able to come up with risk estimates reliably. And in other methods, not. So I would say the devil's the detail. AI is kind of like using the word Americans, which American and what context and what question you're going to ask that American. Like, is that American a plumber? Are they giving good advice for plumbing? Or are they a doctor that wouldn't give a good advice for plumbing, but would for medicine? So it's very broad. So I'd say the devil's in the details, and it's getting better.
So being in the space as long as you have, what are some of the trends that you're seeing in the longevity space? Something that's like, I guess, changing it, or how has the space changed since then? Because I'm not seeing I guess I keep hearing like that we want to push this idea of longevity into the traditional medicine field, but do you think it's being adopted? Do you think it's actually going to be a hard sell, or is this something that's just going to be its own field forever, completely on its own?
Okay, so those are some great questions. I think what I hear you asking is, one is what trends I'm seeing, and then separately is it going to be integrated?
Right.
So we'll focus on the first one, then remind me about the second. So in terms of the trends that are happening, a major trend I'm seeing is typically people come in to the doctor's office after they get sick. Yeah, so it might be late in the game. But in longevity medicine, when it's exercised in an evidence-based manner, you're collecting data in real time. So you could pick things up earlier on when you have more power to change the trajectory. So let me anchor that with a real concrete example. Typically, people wait until where individuals are diabetic before you put them on a diabetic medication. But isn't it better to avoid diabetes in the first place?
Yeah.
Then if you have a good doctor, maybe they might pick it up at pre-diabetes. But even pre-diabetes, in my mind, is too late in the game. Even before your pre-diabetes, which is based on a glucose level or an average glucose score, your hemoglobin A1C, you can actually see a rise in your insulin, or you become more insulin resistant. You can gradually see your glucose rise, even if it's not yet at a pre-diabetic level. So if you're monitoring people continuously and you start to see that glucose rise, even if you're not even pre-diabetic, or if you're starting to see even before that, the insulin start to rise, or your HOMO-IR, which is one measure of insulin resistance, start to move in the wrong direction, you can pick that up and change people's trajectory so they never actually become sick. To me, the ideal isn't like optimally treating people's health conditions. It's preventing them in the first place and then putting people on the best, healthiest trajectory that's possible for them in real time. So one major trend I see is measuring in real time and just keeping up with things so that you can prevent people from getting sick in the first place. So that's my answer to the first question.
Nice. Yeah, no, that's great. I would love to see that you be able to go to a doctor and just for a regular checkup and then be able to just suggest, hey, why don't you monitor this, to see if you might be right for either this medication or be able to prevent something that's genetically predisposed to, that like my family, there's diabetes in my family and most of them do get it. I've been able to prevent it somehow, but I don't know. I've never taken any metrics. I don't know how or why I don't have it, but my sister does,
Would you much rather, instead of someone pick it up in an annual exam, for you to say, hey, things are moving in this direction, here's what you can do?
Yeah.
Now, that's a great example you illustrated because you mentioned it runs in your family. So a lot of people think that if it runs in their family, it's inevitable. But the reality is, depending on which study, somewhere between 5 and 20% is genetic. The rest is lifestyle or epigenetic, which is a combination of the genetics with the lifestyle. So really, most of the propensity relates to what's going on, things that we have control over. So it's not inevitable. When we understand that it initiates this, not sort of like I am having medicine delivered on me, but more like, what can I be doing now to be proactive about my health? Because I think when people understand that these things aren't inevitable, that they do something about it. Another thing that often stops people is that kind of like a fear, I don't want to test because I don't know what I might find.
I don't want to know. Exactly. Yeah. Ignorance is bliss.
It's a little bit like cancer. Like something else that some of my clients do is they get baseline imaging. Most of the imaging ends up showing, okay, here's where you are. A lot of the times it's seeing a change. When you have a baseline and you see a change relative to that, you can pick things up early when you can do something about it. So like there was a study through Human Longevity Institute that found approximately in the range of 1 to 3% of the population who feel completely healthy and well have a completely detectable neoplasm or tumor in their body right there that if they didn't know about, if they didn't get tested. And they wouldn't have gone tested unless they took that action. They wouldn't have been recommended by standard conventional medicine. So in about half of those cases, they were malignant. So if you have a malignant tumor, aren't you much better off than knowing about it and just removing it, like just having it one quick procedure and having it done, than waiting for medicine to detect it later while it's growing, you're not knowing about it, when you might not be able to be as successful, or even the procedure itself is much more invasive than like a quick in and out, you're doing great. That to me is the future of medicine, where you just have this medical surveillance and it just tells you, hey, we're making a little adjustment for you.
and this will be for I guess the vast majority of people, because you go to the doctor, like you said, you're sick already, so you need, or you're trying to prevent something, hopefully, but the entire population should be monitoring what they're doing to prevent most sicknesses and illnesses. So yeah, that's I love that. What in Roundtable specifically, just a couple of takeaways that you got from this weekend so far?
Well, most of my takeaway is that the movement is growing. Nice. I'm a thought leader in this area, and I keep on top of the literature, so I can't say I learned any new science because I read it in the journals as it comes out. For your listeners who are curious about the research that's coming out and are on X, formerly Twitter, aging doc, that's DOC, one, then the number 1. On X, I post publications as they come out. But I would say the research is a major arm, education is a major arm, and we need standardization. One of my concerns is separating the wheat from the chaff. I think we need reimbursement models where we fund the research adequately, but we also need a translational pipeline, because we're here at the Buck Institute where there are a lot of great animal models in mice, and the Buck Institute only in recent years, under the leadership of Eric Verdin, who heads up the Buck for the most recent term, they're starting to do more trials. But we have a bit of a funding gap between moving from the animal models to humans. We already have research that there are medications available now that extend not just the health so you have older mice, but older mice that live healthier. You actually have mice that live longer, but they're also running faster through cages longer too. They have less gray fur. You know what I mean? Things that you can relate to. Wow, these are young, frisky mice. And their biology isn't so fundamentally different from ours, but some of these, we just need to test them in humans, and it won't all pan out. But I think it's just a matter of time to be able to have these work out in humans. But a rate limiting factor is that funding gap, and that incentives, and lowered the threshold from a regulatory framework, moving from the preclinical studies to testing them in humans. So I think that's a major takeaway for listeners. And I'm a scientific advisor for the Alliance for Longevity Initiatives. So for listeners out there, if they're looking for ways to support that science, if you do a Google search for the Alliance for Longevity Initiatives, they help educate Congress about how to not just fund the science, but also have streamlined regulatory pathways that still establish efficacy as well as safety, just in a streamlined manner, to help bring these faster to people. Because as powerful as lifestyle medicine is, eating right and exercising, sleep, stress, and so forth, we also want to have therapeutics complement that, so we can take things further than just lifestyle. It's not a substitute, but we want to be able to go above and beyond that. So that's a great way to support the science.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, the very knowledgeable Dr. David. That's enough time we have here at the Better by the Numbers podcast. Where can we find you?
You can, if you want to connect on LinkedIn, if you type Aging Doc space LinkedIn, okay, you'll be able to find me there. I'm also on X, as I mentioned, and those are my primary profiles. I'm pretty much on most of the others as well, but that's where there's the most information.
Well, thank you for joining us. That was amazing.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Talking to a thought leader here at the 3rd annual Roundtable of Longevity Clinics. We'll see you on the next one.